So, defining art, I would never call myself an artist. I found this an excellent question. The galleries, in my mind, always are the gatekeepers. Again, it takes a while to make sure the world believes in that. There's nothing wrong with trending art. There's a reason why it's trending.
Hi Jyotsna.
Hi.
So today we'll have a quick chat about art and the current trends that are going on. But before that, can you tell me how do you define art?
So, defining art, I feel it's notoriously difficult because I feel like there is no universal definition for art. Given the context, given the history, given the cultural context, it keeps evolving, it keeps changing. But I still feel that there are a few elements that sort of, bring in some consistency into the definition of art itself. I think first on that would be expression. So art is nothing but a form of human expression. An expression that cannot ordinarily be done by common language. So you require something which is slightly more uplifted, a little more inherent, a little more natural, raw, right? So that for me is one integral part of the definition of art. Second, I would say is creation and skill. To be able to do art, there is some level of skill that's required. And call it skill stroke talent, because talent is inherent. You need not learn, you did not study to become an artist. That said, there is some inherent talent that's required to be able to do it. Like, I would never call myself an artist. I do not have that inherent talent, I feel. Maybe my eyes can spot great art, but I really don't think I'm somebody who can create art in any form. So some inherent skill required there. The third I would say is some kind of aesthetics and sensory experience, right? By aesthetics, I don't necessarily imply that art should be beautiful. Art could be provocative, it could be disturbing, it could be any of this. That said, it needs to appeal, right? So that's the third bit. And then, like I said, the sensory experience. When I, as an audience looking at an art, I need to be able to feel something. I may or may not be able to articulate it, but I need to feel something. So that sensory experience, if that generates something in me, I think it's successful art. And then I would say a little bit of communication and interpretation as well. I feel like art is that communication between the artist and the audience. Again, it doesn't speak a fixed language. It depends on my interpretation as the audience. The same art that appeals to one audience may not appeal to quite another. So it's important to keep all these elements in mind and then see what really connects with you when it comes to definition of art.
Art is just a form of inspiration. Where do you think there's a line between inspiration and infringement in art?
I feel like this is a very crucial question in the creative field. The lines are blurry between infringement and inspiration. There are just a few key elements that I touch upon. I don't think I'm the ultimate judge there, but the kind of things I sort of look at when I'm on the fence or when I'm trying to decide. Whether when I'm reviewing an artist's portfolio, work, their style, or when I'm buying it for myself. Right, so number one, I would say it's inspiration and not necessarily infringement when an artist, a new artist, is wanting to build on an existing idea. I'll explain with an example. So let's think about this. Maybe a certain style, cubism or impressionism. It's a style that somebody else really imprinted their name on. However, there's a new artist that's coming up, with new ideas, concepts. However, their style is pretty much the same, right? So that, in my mind, is something to be encouraged, is inspired art. And that leads me to the second point that helped me sort of differentiate between the two, is that inspired work, if it is inspired truly and not infringed, is usually transformative. It's got nothing to do with the old, from where it took the inspiration. So there's plenty of add-on. There are some elements that you could very loosely connect to the older one, but in general, it's transformative in nature. So that's the second bit that I would talk about in terms of aesthetics, just the expressions, the context in which that was created as well make a lot of difference. And third that I could think of, I think it's a bit of smart play, that you have to understand the law. You have to understand what copyright infringement laws talk about. What can you build on and what is an absolute no-no, right? So not going by your subjective ideas, but also doing a little bit of study. You could be fantasizing a certain kind of technique, a certain kind of context, a certain kind of style, but go study the law a little bit to see if it's allowed or not allowed. Because you'd be investing so much energy into it, you'd be putting in such skill, time, effort into this, you do not want to be caught into that trap. So trying to understand what are those unprotected elements and what are those protected elements. That makes a lot of difference. Once you have figured out that this is an unprotected element and I truly do know, authentically I'm going to build on this idea, I'm going to transform it further, I think the territory is all yours. So that's how I'd look at it. And like I said, I'm no expert here, but I always err on the side of caution. Whether one, when I'm representing something at the gallery, and second, even when I'm looking at picking up something for my personal art collection.
So Jyotsna, what role do you think you have as a gallery in shaping or encouraging art trends like Ghibli and preserving artistic integrity?
I call this an excellent question because it really touches upon the complex role that a gallery plays in the art ecosystem. I think good galleries who kind of preserve the artistic integrity and also play the commercialization game really, really well know how to do both. It's a fine balancing act. Right, so I think the first thing is the galleries in my mind always are the gatekeepers. They are that entity, that institution that curate art and the artists in such a way that they are able to really bring good art to the table for the audiences. Now, what do I mean by good art? Like I said, I've mentioned this earlier as well, good art is not just beautiful art, it's not just trending art. It could be difficult art as well, it could be unpopular art as well, but at the same time, it's valuable art, it's important art, and it needs to be shown, even if it's not the most commercially viable or the most popular at this point in time. Right? So, galleries play a gatekeeping role. For a reason, it's always said it's a curated list. Right? They could be, the second role there would be the champions for the right artistic talent. There could be artists around who are producing really, really valuable, important work. That said, they may not be getting that platform. So they are that platform that encourage that artist. Sometimes galleries commission artists for a long stretch of periods. Right? Why do they do that? Just so that these artists can experiment. They could really let their artistic experimentation hit the roof while working in that protected environment with the gallery. Right? And again, more often than not, galleries are taking that big risk when they are doing that. They are taking that risk because they believe in that work. Again, it takes a while to make sure the world believes in that. And I also go a second level and question, I don't think it's the gallery's job to make sure the world also believes in it. If they believe they provide the right platforms, the right places, the right exposure, there's high likelihood that the world would start to believe in that. But I think it's about the orchestration. Do you start with the goal that world has to believe in it? Or do you start with the goal that the artist needs to be given exposure because the artist is creating important art? Right? So these are those two things that I feel galleries play a big role in. Now coming to how do they support or not support, endorse, not endorse anything that's trending. Look, at the outset, I'll clarify this, that There is nothing wrong with trending art. There's a reason why it's trending. It's finding popularity, it's connecting with people, it's resonating with people. It's important to sit back and take note of it. But it goes back to the second question that you asked, right? Is it inspired? Is it infringed? Are there certain risks associated with it? How do you see it? A gallery is expected to be educated on most of these elements. And as long as they are taking an educated call on what they want to represent and what they do not want to represent, it should be all good. Ghibli, like you spoke about that, it's one of those most trending. I personally haven't still played around with it, but I do believe there is definitely merit in it. There is merit in it. Why is it connecting with, broad range of audiences today? So if a gallery around looks at it with a critical eye and sees how it can be experimented upon, how a certain kind of a collection can be produced, it should be all good. But like I said, it's more a discretionary call that they have to take. Something that's trending is not necessarily bad, and something that never gets out to wider acclaim is not the most important art either. So it's important to keep these elements in mind, and that's where I rest my case.